讲得特别好，所以他每年都来支持我们。今年是不远万里啊，因为改签本来到广州，再跑到这里，非常辛苦。那我们就废话少说，我们就听他精彩的演讲。今天的这个 topic of his topic is paradoxe of Chinese medicine.
The paradox of integrative medicine. Yeah. So thank you everybody for being here today. It is a great honor for me to be invited to this beautiful congress, and I want to greet all the participants and to thank all the organizers, and particularly Professor Shan and Professor Hefen Wang, who kindly invited me here. Please forgive my wrong English, but I will do my best. I also want to greet my friend Docteur Leung, who will also intervene this morning, since his father, Docteur Leung Kok Yuen, has been my teacher for 35 years. And you can see him treating some stars in America, and he was himself the descendant of 15 generations of TCM doctors, and I always want to present him before me when I talk, because I think I always feel observed by him when I talk, each time I talk about Chinese medicine. So please excuse me if the topic of my lecture will go beyond the subject of reproductive medicine, but more generally be a thinking about the notion of integrative medicine itself, because I think it's very important. So let me start with a short story. As he was still a little boy, one of my sons one day decided to slide a slice of ham in our video recorder. And when I asked him why he did that, he said, "Oh, I want to see it on the television." A few times later, my son proposed himself to prepare the dinner, and we decided to let him proceed. And he took a leftover of vegetable soup from the fridge. He soaked some squares of chocolate into soup, and he asked us to heat the mixture. My son had discovered what I call the integrative cooking. Since then, my son grew up, and he decided to study traditional Chinese medicine also. But he abandoned the idea of sliding patients into machines in order to see their disease, or to insert chemicals into traditional soups to increase their effects. Was he right or not? This is what we will try to see now. Dr. Yang Mingchun, head of the NACO department at Chengdu Hospital, one day said to me, "We have two ways to look at life. We can shut ourselves into a laboratory and stitch our eyes to a microscope, or we can go out, climb on a hill, and widen our eyes." It's an interesting point. We have two ways to see life. If we choose the first solution, we will tend to see human life as a collection of cells or molecular structures. But if we choose the second one, we will see landscapes. It is written in the Huangti I Ching that the doctor should look at his patient as the painter looks at his canvas. Whatever the medicine we practice, we should always remember that man belongs to nature and that we look like our mother. Docteur Leung Kok Yuen was used to tell us the following story. He said, imagine that if you come back from holidays, you open the door of your house and you discover mushrooms all over the wall. At that moment, you may have two possible reactions. The first one can be to say, oh, these mushrooms must be destroyed. There are too much mushrooms here. Then you should decide to count the mushrooms, to measure them. You can take pictures, you can take samples in order to determine what kind of mushroom it is. And finally, we try to scratch the mushrooms, to poison them or to burn them. In other terms, medical terms, you will use surgery, chemotherapy, or radiotherapy. Even if you make them disappear, you already know that you will have to repeat this treatment to prevent the mushrooms from growing again. You can also have another reaction, which is, oh, it is too confined here. There is too much dampness in the room. In this case, you will decide to open the windows to renew the air inside the room, to open the shutters to let the light come through, to restore the heating system, etc. In this case, you don't really care about the kind of mushrooms that are on the wall. Your concern is to modify the internal climate, since if you succeed in this, the mushrooms will not only disappear, but they will not come back once the room will have been cleaned. Here is, in my opinion, the main difference in the way Western and Chinese medicines diagnose and treat problems. Mainly inspired by the philosophy of Mr. Pasteur, Western medicine essentially focuses on the illness and its manifestation and treats it with very powerful means. More inspired by Mr. Hippocrates, who lived at the same period as Qi Po, Chinese medicine focuses more on the conditions for the illness to appear and has a set of natural methods to prevent them. When Chinese medicine has to face some powerful or artificially created disease, it does not always have the right tool adapted to the situation. This is why it needs the help and the skills of Western medicine. Western medicine, on its side, is much more gifted for treating emergency than for prevention. Its only way to prevent diseases is early detection, what we call early detection, also called early diagnosis. The only way Western medicine has to control diseases, like firemen, is by carefully watching the arrival of new mushrooms and to attack them as early as possible. For this purpose, this medicine has developed a powerful monitoring technology based on medical analysis and imaging laboratories. Therapeutically speaking, its only way to do prevention is usually to propose a lifetime medication intake. This is maybe a good thing for pharmaceutical industry, but the problem is that by absorbing repeated small doses of poison in order to fight permanently against mushrooms, the body doesn't have the opportunity to clean itself anymore. On the contrary, it continues to weaken, to suffer from side effects that create new illnesses or more resistant mushrooms, for which new treatments have to be discovered, given. This is how a well-known spiral is created, in which patients are commonly trapped. Anyway, we can notice that one single therapeutic view cannot take into account the human health in its whole. This is why integrative medicine clearly represents a chance for the medicine of tomorrow. But the question remains, what is the exact vision of this integrative medicine? Does it look at the entire house and around? How many of us in this World Congress are specialized in making links rather than in analyzing details? Among the different modern TCM, modern TCM congresses I took part in, I have seen many leading experts talking about experimental research and presenting their findings about some active ingredients hidden inside traditional Chinese drugs. One of them even got a Nobel Prize. But I have seen much less speakers talking about herbs as if they were people working together, describing patients as if they were landscapes, or including seasons, climates, emotions, or even death in their explanation of life. However, death is just the reverse process of birth, not the contrary of life. So why? Then arrives the science argument. Some people consider that the modern medical science has made so much progress that TCM has now to prove its scientific nature by following the epistemological standards of Western biomedicine. This kind of argument is not scientific, since it ignores the fact that there are different sciences, being themselves the sources of different medical approaches. Some sciences are based on a materialistic paradigm. This is the case for biochemistry and genetic engineering, which are the basis of the medicine of today. Comparatively, Chinese medicine relies more on the physics principle, for whom the notion of energy is common. Quantum physics also takes into account the impact of the spirit over the material. In his book, The Tao of Physics, the physicist Fritjof Capra demonstrates that the latest theories of physics just correspond to the 1,000-year-old theory of yin-yang. So yes, medicine is a science, but we should maybe rather say medicines are sciences, since none of them has a single facet. Since TCM looks at life as widely as possible, studying this medicine requires, for instance, some notions of astronomy, climatology, geology, ecology, sociology, psychology, philosophy, and so on. Needless to say, this vision of medicine far exceeds the field of microscopes, medical exams, scanners, or dissection rooms. To know what is above, say the Neiqing Sowen, is the Tao of heaven. To know what is below is the Tao of earth, while between them is humanity. Understanding this gives long life, but ignoring the laws of sky and earth lead to disasters. Regarding the process of integration, sciences having the widest view should logically embrace those who have the most limited ones. It is usually not very logic, to cut the foot in order to fit to the shoe. This is the heart of what I call the paradoxical concept of integrative medicine. How can traditional Chinese medicine get integrated into the Western medicine concept? This question comes to my mind each time I see people in white lab coats testing the effect of acupuncture points or traditional drugs on animals, or experimenting the same formula on hundreds of people, officially in order to prove the efficiency of TCM. These kind of experiences can only lead to the conclusion that these old medicine are not very effective, but these researchers never put into question the validity of their own methodology, which definitely does not correspond to the epistemology of the medicine they claim to study. The purpose of traditional medicines has always been to adapt treatments to people, not people to treatments. These medicines use products that are not too strong nor harmful. Hippocrates said, primum non nocere, first do not harm. These medicines use products that are not too strong or harmful, I said, since it is their adequacy to the situation rather than their personal power that makes the efficiency. This requires, of course, a very good individual diagnosis. Same thing for acupuncture points. They do not have the same effectiveness depending the patient and the situation. If the body does not need a point, it will not react to its puncture. It is a good thing, otherwise all mosquitoes would be acupuncturists. No need to say that humans are even more different from animals. Traditional Chinese medicine has nothing to do with experimenting treatments on animals. It would rather consider and treat every patient as he was a king or a Buddha. The medicine of today does not take so much the individual in account. We merely trust machines, including for treating humans. This is very sad. I must confess here that I am a little bit worried for TCM. This beautiful medicine is like a big tree, but its medical branches, instead of being a set understood as a whole, are now more and more studied and practiced separately. Some of them are even vanishing. Perhaps it is the reason why Chinese medicine has begun to graft itself into Western medicine. But today the word traditional sounds more like a marketing concept than a wish to respect the integrity of this old medicine, which is yet a treasure for history, science, and humanity. So the big question is, will integrative medicine be able to keep its wealth under the form of two distinct medicines, having an opposite view maybe, but a mutual understanding? Or will the face and language of integrative medicine finally just be the one of the most powerful of these two medicines? This question has something to do with the yin-yang theory. You all perfectly know this theory, of course. Let me just draw your attention of its interesting symbol. One yin part, with yang inside, one yang part with yin inside. Yin knows yang, but yin remains yin. Yang knows yin, but yang remains yang. This is what makes the balance. Now let's imagine some unbalance within this symbol. Here are two medicines, two sciences, two philosophies, alien one from another. This has long been the case for Chinese medicine and Western medicine. Here, one of the two medicines, of the two sciences, takes into account the other one, but the other one just recognizes its own logic. This is what happened more recently in history, when Western medicine and Chinese medicine started to meet each other. Now, this is what happens when one medicine develops itself to the point that it compresses the other one, which is about to disappear. This is, I think, the present situation of TCM, and beyond it, all the traditional medicines in the world. And here, yin melts into yang, producing a gray uniform symbol. Minority medicine has no other choice but mixing itself into the dominant prevailing medicine. The latter integrates the former in the sense that it absorbs it. The result is a medicine that has just slightly changed color outside, but remains basically single and unchanged inside. In some way, all these variations describe abnormalities, unbalances, pathological versions of the original symbol. It is for me a legitimate fear that integrative medicine could one day look like this uniform symbol, representing one poor medicine instead of two good. Analyzing and treating mushrooms, germs, and crazy cells does not require the same skill as looking at human beings as a landscape and treating him by modifying its internal climates, and vice versa. These two kinds of knowledge are not fundamentally opposite nor incompatibles. They are just simply as different as they are complementary. It is not impossible but very rare for one single person to master completely the two fields. How do you recognize a great restaurant? It has good cooks, good pastry chefs, good sommelier, wine waiters, for those who like wine, good bakers. It also needs good products and good servers. All of them do not have the same training and education, but every one of them works to the excellency of the restaurant. Each specialist has been trained at its own school of taste and work with the others while not imposing its own way of cooking, tools, or ingredients. This is the way Western and Chinese medicine should maybe work together, side by side, sharing their mutual understandings and results, but each one remaining in its own field of knowledge and expertise, without having to prove to the other that he deserved to exist, nor having to mix vegetables and chocolate in the same soup. This is why the notion of integrative medicine does not appear to me as obvious as it may look. The word integration itself is somewhat ambiguous, since it recalls the possibility of appropriation, of absorption from one medical system by another. Maybe the term collaborative medicine or cooperative medicine could have differently underlined the complementarity and the mutual respect we have discussed before. But words are not the most important. Regardless of its name, integrative medicine represents a hope for two medicines that are limited alone. And this hope must not be muffled. For that, Western medicine has certainly an extra effort to do. The most important one would be to stop trying to understand and evaluate TCM through its own prism. Otherwise, it will always underestimate this medicine, and as a result, it will integrate it without really respecting it. On the contrary, Western medicine should take this opportunity for opening its mind to TCM, which is historically its great sister, and through it possibly rediscover its own history, since Chuang-Tzu was very right: too far east is west. Thank you very much for your attention.
愿我找的智慧眼，让我大悲观世音。愿我速度一切中，让我大悲观世音。愿我找的上方天。